Everybody. Welcome to Dangerous Ideas. I'm Lee Camp. We're going to get into the big three that control it all. New reporting on the shadow banks that control this system. The big three. I'll reveal who those are and how exactly much of the U.S. corporate government, the U.S. corporate state in our inverted totalitarian system that they own. It is unprecedented. It is unbelievable. And it gets to the root of how this system and this empire function. I will be getting into that. But let's start off with, I like to start off with a little something, really, with the really important stuff, such as the fact that Donald Trump has just released shoes to celebrate his assassination attempt. We live in like the worst simulation. This is a fucking simulation. Donald Trump has released $300 shoes with a photo of him with blood on his face on the side of the shoe, and of course, an American flag. This is like, to imagine. I'm at a loss of words. Why are we here? What is this? What is this? This is like in the Sims. I don't know, maybe I'm dating myself. The Sims, where the game, you'd leave a guy just like walking into a wall over and over, and he kind of didn't know he was doing that, and he didn't know how to get out of it, so he just kept walking into the wall. This is like that version of simulation, except this is worse. I'd rather be the guy stuck walking into the wall over and over again. That would be so much better. You know, you get a little CTE. Forget that you've been walking in the wall 20 minutes ago. Your memory would refresh every few minutes. But this, shoes to celebrate a failed assassination attempt with a bloody photo of Trump on the side of the shoe. This is like, you remember the first World Trade Center bombing, not 9/11, but in the early 90s, I think it was. There was an attempted attack on the World Trade Center where a bomb went off underneath it. So it was like an attempt at bombing the World Trade Center, but it didn't. The bomb kind of went off, but it didn't do much. This would be like having a T-shirt with that picture on it. Ha ha! You tried to attack the World Trade Center, but look at this. I'm going to wear a T-shirt of this bomb that failed to go off. Look at me. Or this is like the underwear. Like if you had a T-shirt of the underwear bomber, yeah. Remember, he like set his underwear on fire, but it didn't really do anything. Attempted underwear bomber. All right. Oh, we are in the worst possible simulation. I mean, honestly. One of the guys who I'm about to talk about, who rules the world, his last name is Fink, all right? Which means detestable person. Simulation, okay? Biden's the president, and he's just Biden time until he dies. It's a simulation, okay? The guy who shot Donald Trump was named Crook. It's a simulation, okay? It's a simulation. They've run out of, whoever created the simulation has run out of names, so they're just using names that like are way too on the nose. You know, Elon Musk, his last name means worm in Swedish. It's a simulation, okay? He is a worm. His last name means worm. It just, someone has put us in a shitty simulation. And Donald Trump has shoes to celebrate his assassination attempt. I don't know whether to laugh or cry. I really don't. Okay. So Biden, it's seeming more and more likely, is going to step down, not step down from president, but step aside from running for president. We all know he's a catastrophe. I don't need to get into just how much of a catastrophe he is, which I have many times, as is Donald Trump in his own glorious way. But I keep Googling whether, news on Biden to make sure he didn't like step down 3 minutes ago, because it very well could happen, honestly, like any minute. But now we have polling showing 2/3 of Democrats, 2/3 of those who think the Democrats are good. Like, so these are people so dumb that they think either the Republicans or Democrats are going to do anything for them. That is the level of IQ they're working at. And these are people who still have supported Biden through most of his term. And now 2/3 of them are saying he needs to withdraw from the race. 65% of Democrats overall say withdraw and allow his party to select a different candidate. That's pretty incredible for the people that support the Democrats. Now, if you were to look nationwide and not just say Democrats, but include Republicans and every independent, by the way, independents, in case anyone needs reminding, independents are now the largest party in the United States. I mean, they're technically not a party, but independents, people who are neither Republican or Democrat, which I guess includes me, are now more than Republicans or Democrats alone. So if you were to include all them, imagine what the number is who think that Biden should step aside. It must be, 80% of the country, 90% of the country. But then on top of that, you have even the big Democrats, the big queens and kings of the parasitic community known as the actual in-office federal Democrats. Even they are now turning on Biden. Pelosi privately gave Biden a phone call to tell him to step aside and that she didn't think he could win, and that polling shows he can't win. Obama apparently has said the same thing to him, and Adam Schiff publicly came out and said that Biden needs to step aside, and Hakeem Jeffries has conveyed concerns about Biden. And it's like, yeah, of course you should be concerned. I mean, honestly, does anyone believe that if Biden were left like alone in a house, like a cat when you go on vacation, that he would survive more than 2 days on his own? Does anyone think that? Like, that's a good test for like, you shouldn't be president nor be running for president. This article from CNN says that Biden responded to Pelosi's private phone call with defensiveness. Well, sure. Okay. He was defensive that he doesn't want to step down. He wants to keep running for president. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Okay. You're defensive. I'm sure he's defensive when they put in his catheter. I'm sure he's like, I don't want to, but you do it anyway. When they sit him down on the potty, I'm sure he's defensive, but you do it anyway. So who cares if he's defensive? It doesn't matter. You should not be president nor running for president. Neither should Donald Trump for many other reasons. But this also leads to the fact that I just noticed that the Green Party is trending on Twitter under Twitter politics. Maybe it's because people are noticing that these two are clowns. Clowns. One of them brain dead from dementia. The other one brain dead from a form of toxic narcissism and various other kinds of what was the term they called for the sickness of wealth? They came up with some term for it. But anyway, so he's mentally brain dead for that. And then you got RFK Jr., who said his brain was eaten by a parasite. So those are the top three, percentage-wise. But apparently the Green Party is trending on Twitter. Not sure how that happened. I'm surprised Twitter even allowed that to happen. And by the way, Elon Musk has, speaking of Mr. Worm himself, speaking of brain worms as well, has fully endorsed Donald Trump. He did it the other day after Donald Trump survived the assassination, which I don't know why that would be the decider. You're like, oh, okay, he dodged a bullet. Now I'm for him. Now I'm all about him. This means he's good. That bullet missed him. Means he's good. How dumb does that decision have to be? Like, why should that matter in terms of what decisions he's going to make as president? Bullet missed him. Yeah, that's why I picked that guy. Maybe it's the shoes. Maybe it's the I survived assassination tennis shoes, the basketball shoes that made the difference. Anyway, Elon Musk endorsed him, and someone posted that this Elon Musk, luckily for a lot of us, is showing us the perfect connection between corporatism and the fascist state, and how a corporatist, the richest man in the world, the leader of the top of several of the largest companies in the world, has slowly joined with one of the heads of the fascist system. I include Donald Trump and Joe Biden both as heads of the fascist system. Donald Trump was in office for 4 years. The people who really support him and go, yeah, he's going to drain the swamp, seem to have forgotten that he already was there for 4 years and did fucking nothing? How much was the swamp drain? How different was your life under Donald Trump? What really changed, folks, about your life? Unless you're one of the richest 12 dickwads in America, what changed about your life over those 4 years? Anything? I don't think so. Okay, but I want to get into, I just talked about the theater. That's the theater designed to distract us from the reality of how these systems work. And I want to get into how these systems work. And I want to get into the big three who control it all. The big three who control, at minimum, the US system, but a lot of the global system as well. So let's do that. Please, everyone, click thumbs up, click share, do all those things. I am fighting kind of an insane amount of suppression. Every time I have a video that does well, they then make sure to knock me down for 2-3 weeks where my videos get almost nothing. So that's what I'm dealing with, and you guys make it possible to keep going. So, throw in a super chat of a couple bucks if you got it. And even if you're not watching this live, you can still do that on YouTube. Throw in a couple dollar tip. You can also join up at leecamp.net and get special segments and all that good stuff. So please do that. Click the thumbs up. That's the easiest thing to do, and the subscribe button as well. But all right. So Ben Norton tweeted about this and alerted me to this article put out by Cambridge University Press. And it's about the three shadow banks. Shadow banks is kind of a more, casual term, but it is a commonly used term. But the shadow banks, these are Wall Street asset managers. I've certainly mentioned them before, but I've never talked about the big three together as an entity. And these numbers maybe this is the first time someone's actually taken the time to factor in all these numbers and actually figure this out. But the big three asset managers, BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street, are the largest shareholders of 438 out of the 500 largest corporations, companies in America on Wall Street, the S&P 500. Let me say that again. BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. And I assume you've heard of BlackRock before. Vanguard and State Street maybe mentioned a little less, but those three are the top shareholders of 88% of the largest corporations in America. And if you've been following my stuff, if you pay attention to my shows at all, then you've probably heard me say that we live in inverted totalitarianism ruled by the anonymous corporate state. Yes, we have the puppets at the top. We have the Donald Trumps and the Joe Bidens and all these clowns in Congress that change very little of the operating systematic machinations of this country. And who is above them? Who's really pulling the levers? Well, it is the richest people in the world and the richest corporations in the world. And I've said that many, 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 many times, but what I and most talk about a little less is of those corporations, of this inverted totalitarian system, there is three that are the biggest shareholders of almost all of them, which is crazy. That level of reducing it all down to a tiny dark core of disgusting, soulless, parasitic psychopathy is kind of amazing that it's been reduced to that small an amount. But it's from Cambridge University Press. I have not had time to read the entire article, so I may have to bring you a segment 2 in a few days where I bring even more details about this. But it's the hidden power of the big three. And I'll read the abstract of this report. Since 2008, a massive shift has occurred from active toward passive investment strategies. The passive index fund industry is dominated by BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street, which we call the Big Three. We comprehensively map the ownership of the Big Three in the United States and find that together they constitute the largest shareholder in 88% of S&P 500 firms. In contrast, active funds, the big three, hold relatively illiquid and permanent ownership positions. This has led to opposing views of some saying, oh, that means they don't have as much shareholder power because they can't just pull out all their shares. But that's like saying the owner of a business doesn't have a lot of power because he can't leave, or if he did, the business would collapse. I think Elon Musk has a lot of power at Tesla, even though if he left, it's quite possible Tesla would have a lot of trouble. Just because they can't pull out their shares at a day's notice does not mean they don't have immense control over these corporations. And then they say in this abstract that there's others who say that it actually gives them a stronger incentive to manipulate the corporations that they are the largest shareholders of, because they're the largest shareholders of them and they can't get out. Meaning their goal is to manipulate these corporations to make them the most money, and to manipulate the government and the country to make the most money. And BlackRock, I haven't done research on all of them, and some things are more secretive than others. Thank you, Mark Dansky, for the donation over on Rumble. Mark is offering me a puff of oxygen. I think he thinks I'm breathless over the ownership of the big three, which is fine. I'm fine with being breathless. But anyway, I've been working on my lung capacity. But they obviously have a massive incentive to manipulate these corporations, to move them to their own ends in order to benefit them, because they're the biggest stakeholders and they can't get out easily. They can't just sell their shares tomorrow. Through an analysis of proxy vote records, we find that the big three do utilize coordinated voting strategies and hence follow a centralized corporate governance strategy. Moreover, the big three may exert hidden power through two channels. First, via private engagements with management of invested companies. What? You think they'd meet up with them privately? You think they might have a phone call? You think a one-sentence text from the head of BlackRock, Larry Fink, which, as I mentioned, means detestable person in the dictionary. Do you think a one-sentence text from him to the head of Comcast doesn't have influence over Comcast? Of course it does. Of course they influence. I mean, that's how corporate America works. No. They just invest heavily in these companies and they say, look, we are hands off. Sure, we own the largest stake of ExxonMobil or some shit, but we're never going to have any say. Look, that would be unethical, honestly. That would be unethical. So they say they have hidden power through private engagements, but also because company executives could be prone to internalizing the objectives of the big three. What? You think there's a little bit of, not self-censorship, but, self-alteration of the company to move towards what BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard want you to do? Fucking yeah, of course there is. Yet again, this is how capitalist systems work. Let's see, what was it? They own 438 of the 500 S&P 500. These 400 co-owned corporations account for 82% of S&P 500 market capitalization. So the amount of money is 82%. Large companies where the big three are not the main shareholders are typically dominated by private individuals. So yeah, their point is that there are some companies where these big three, BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard, are not able to be the biggest shareholders because things like Google, the biggest shareholders are the creators, Sergey Brin and Larry Page. Berkshire Hathaway, the biggest shareholders, Warren Buffett. Amazon, biggest shareholders, Jeff Bezos. Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg. Walmart, Walton family. Oracle, Larry Ellison. Comcast, Roberts family. Although, but in a lot of these, and then Kraft Heinz, although in a lot of these, if you look up the biggest shareholders of, for example, Comcast, Let's see. Biggest shareholders of Comcast, you're going to find Vanguard, BlackRock, and Capital Research and Measurement Company. So Vanguard and BlackRock are the biggest shareholders because they're talking about corporate shareholders as opposed to the family. Which family was that owns Robert's family owns Comcast. So they're the biggest shareholders possible outside of the family that created it or owns it, and you look up biggest shareholders of Alphabet and you get BlackRock, State Street are the top two. 355 million. State Street has 190 million. I think these are shares. And so, yeah, even in the ones they're listing as ones that BlackRock or State Street have less influence over, they're still the largest institutional shareholders. So this allows them to exert, of course, massive pull on these corporations. But you can do this fun little game yourself if you want to see how insane this is. Type in biggest shareholders, let's see, of any company, ExxonMobil. Google will tell you biggest shareholders are Vanguard, BlackRock, and State Street. Okay, let's look at biggest shareholders of Lockheed Martin. Biggest shareholders are State Street, Vanguard, and Lockheed Martin Corporation. So, yeah, State Street and Vanguard. Let's look up biggest shareholders of what's another good one? We did big oil. Let's see. Let's do big pharma. Johnson and Johnson. Biggest shareholders, Vanguard, BlackRock. So, are you starting to get the picture? Go ahead. Type in any of the largest companies. Someone said biggest shareholders of Boeing. Let's look that one up. Boeing, Vanguard, BlackRock, top two shareholders. Go ahead. Do it yourself. Type them in. See what you find. These things are immense. They're called shadow banks. They are the ones that actually rule our systems. This does not mean that they're deciding every decision of these corporations, but it means these corporations are not going to go against what would be positive for BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. Something else to know is that it gets perhaps even worse because you look at biggest shareholders of BlackRock and you get Vanguard, BlackRock, and State Street. So the biggest shareholders of BlackRock are Vanguard, BlackRock, and State Street. These people, it's a giant circle jerk. They own trillions of dollars in assets, and they own our system. So Vanguard is also a little weirder because Vanguard, I think, is maybe not publicly traded, but it has a consumer division that has shareholders. But I think that basically Vanguard is more secretive in order to cover up the fact that these big three own each other. And to not get to the bottom of who the actual people are. I mean, we know that Larry Fink, for example, is the CEO of BlackRock, but we don't know perhaps who the biggest owners within, like individual owners within these companies are. And another thing you should know is BlackRock is, let's see, in the Biden administration. If you type in BlackRock Biden administration, you will find out that, and this article is from 2022, so this is not a new advent, but that Biden is intimately connected with BlackRock, the Biden administration. There are former BlackRock people within the Treasury Department within the Biden administration. For one, they point to former executive Eric von Nostrand joining the Treasury Department back in 2022, but that's just one of many. And then I also did a segment recently on how, okay, so you go, okay, BlackRock is in bed with the Biden administration. Well, that, I guess Trump, I guess that means Trump is outside of all this, right? But one of the biggest donors of Trump is Blackstone. The Blackstone CEO, Steve Schwarzman, has said he has announced that he's backing Trump and is one of the biggest donors to Trump. He was also one of the biggest donors to Trump last time around when Trump won the election. And Blackstone is the largest landlord in our country. They're buying up all the houses and jacking up all the rates. So that's part of the reason. I mean, part of several reasons that all of the housing prices are going up like crazy and making it impossible to own a house. That's Blackstone. So good guys. They also bought Ancestry.com. So they own your DNA if you ever signed up for Ancestry. Although here's the thing is because someone related to you probably at some point signed up to Ancestry.com, they own your DNA whether you wanted them to or not, because they have at least the DNA of your cousin, and therefore they essentially own everybody's DNA because they bought Ancestry.com. So that's fun. Good job, everybody, sending in your fucking spit or blood sample to Ancestry.com so you can look at a piece of paper that says, oh, I came from the Vikings. Yay. Hey, I'll just give my DNA over to Blackstone. Anyway, that aside, yeah, Blackstone, one of the biggest supporters of Trump. Guess who owns Blackstone? Largest shareholders. Any guesses? BlackRock, Vanguard. BlackRock is intimately connected with Blackstone, hence the names. I think Blackstone, if I have it right, I think Blackstone was kind of a spin-off of BlackRock, or started by a former BlackRock person. But anyway, so therefore, these big three own corporate America, have control over corporate America. They have control over the Biden and Trump administrations. They have control over U.S. policy. They have the control over the Treasury Department. And most of this is done behind closed doors. I mean, yes, I'm talking about it here now, but I am, relatively speaking, a tiny, tiny platform. And there are others who occasionally mention it, but that won't come close to regular mainstream media coverage. And of course, they would never do that because guess who owns their parent companies like Comcast, BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. So they're not going to be talking about this on a regular basis. Of course, not to mention they're in the job of propaganda for the empire. So why would they suddenly go against that and reveal what the empire is? So again, for those of you joining a little late, 3 shadow banks with trillions of dollars to their name. Just one of them, I don't know all the numbers of if you were to add up all the trillions, but just one of them, BlackRock, oversees over $10 trillion of assets. And again, if you need reminding of what an insane, mind-blowing amount of money that is, if you make $40,000 a year after taxes, so not bad, $40,000 a year after taxes, in order to make $1 trillion, you'd have to work for 25 million years. BlackRock oversees $10 trillion. And that's just BlackRock. That doesn't include Vanguard and State Street. So it is an insane amount of money. Unbelievable. Just complete psychopaths. Hey, thanks, Dan, for getting the super chat started. Oh, actually, Mark donated over on Rumble. Thank you, Dan. Keep fighting. But for those of you joining late, as I was saying, the big three, BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard, are the largest shareholders of 88% of the S&P 500, the 500 largest corporations in the country, or many of them. And I bet of that they own 400, they're the largest shareholders of 438 out of 500. I bet you the ones they're not the largest shareholders of are probably the ones farther down on the list. You know, they were like, that's number 450 of 500 corporations in the S&P 500. Why bother? Why bother going that far down the list? Herney wants to know, how is this legal? Good question, Herney. It's legal because guess who makes the laws? Anyone want to guess? Largely incredibly rich white men. Now, if you want to take the white men part out of it, you could just say rich people. Rich people make the laws, because the people who actually change the laws are very rarely those in the working class. It's very rarely like a coal miner who's like, I do not think these corporations should be doing it to us. And then they fight and go to the courts, and then the courts go, we've studied this rich white elitist law for a long time, and we're going to side with the worker who doesn't even know how to speak in the legalese that allows you entrance into the hallowed halls of our justice system. They're not going to change the laws for the working class. So that means these laws are written and interpreted by, keynote there, and interpreted by the richest, wealthy level of our society. And so they're not going to make it illegal to be them. To put it simply, the wealthy class, the rich in this country, the ruling elite, are not going to make it illegal one day to be them. And that is why we need mass systemic change. We need the workers to unite, the average people, and I just mean average in terms of wealth. I don't mean that you and your brain and your love and your heart and your passion are average. I'm sure they're amazing. But I just mean, in terms of wealth, we need the working class, the bottom 90%, to unite, to not be divided, to not be fighting apart from each other, to not be in fisticuffs, to bring it back to the 1950s. We need to unite, hence the term unions. We need to unite and actually fight against the ruling class that creates these systems that allows for this kind of exploitation and extraction of all of us, of our humanity, of our labor, of our souls that they extract and enrich themselves. We need to unite against that. And all of this show, all of the theatrics, everything from Joe Biden's speeches to Donald Trump's sneakers, $300 assassination sneakers, all of that is designed to keep us fighting, keep us distracted, and keep us from actually changing this system in a grand way. And I just like to add that I think the sneakers would sell better if they kind of had a splattered blood design on them, like just like across it. I think that would probably sell a little better, but I'm sure it'll sell fine. I mean, Trump's a great salesman. He is. Okay, I spent too long on that, and I have so much more. We have the president of the UN, the presidential elections of the of the EU. We have a lot going on. Gaza updates. Actually, I should go to this because there's a segue to this. So this kind of segues from this crazy, rich, ruling elite segue into it brings up the question, how do some other countries do it? Well, here's China and what China has done recently. China has set an annual salary cap on the finance sector amid common prosperity push, meaning prosperity for common people, I guess. And they're setting a cap of 3 million yuan, which is $412,000 a year on the finance sector. Now, you may go, $412,000 a year, that's a lot of money. But that is nothing compared to what our hedge fund managers make. So the fact that China is capping it at $400,000 a year is like, it would be immensely beneficial for the U.S. to do something like that. But the U.S. has no ability within our system to go after the richest of the rich in any way. The richest of the rich control the system. In China, there are a lot, there's plenty of issues with perhaps every system around this globe. But China, there is a way. They do have an ability to go after the richest people in their country, and they have put a cap of $400,000 on the finance sector employees. And you want to know what that is compared to those who make the most on Wall Street? And I don't mean corporations, but I mean actual individuals. Here are the top 5 highest paid hedge fund managers. Ken Griffith of the Chicago-based Citadel. He makes around $4 billion a year. $4 billion a year. Israel Englander. His name is Israel Englander? Jesus. His personal earnings are $3 billion a year. His total net worth is $11.5 billion. Stephen Cohen of Point 72 Asset Management earns $1.9 billion a year. Total net worth of $17.5 billion. David Tepper of Appaloosa Management makes $1.2 billion, and he has a net worth of $18.5 billion. And James Simmons, the founder of Renaissance Technology, makes $1.1 billion a year, total net worth of $28 billion. So there's your top 5, and that's just hedge fund managers. That's not, it's also what they get paid directly. A lot of people will go, oh, that CEO only makes, $300,000 a year or something. But if they're getting paid in stock or they have stock in the company, so, Jeff Bezos didn't need to, I don't know whether he got a salary or not, but when he was head of Amazon, he didn't if he were paid a salary of $400,000 or $1 million a year or something, it's pennies to him. It's literally meaningless to him. So he didn't, whether he did or not, I don't know, but he didn't need to get paid a salary because the stock in Amazon that he was getting was earning him billions every minute or what, billions a year. So it's kind of complicated when you talk about just like income like that. But anyway, so yeah, China's doing that. China is capping how much these lunatics can make. But let's jump to Gaza for a moment, real quick. Update on Gaza. By the way, it's been 9 months of genocide. Celebrate, everybody. Get out your balloons. 9 months of genocide that the U.S. has done nothing to stop and everything to facilitate. So this is a U.S.-backed genocide. The Guardian is reporting that clearing Gaza of almost 40 million tons of rubble will take roughly 15 years, and that's if the bombing stopped today. If Israel stopped the bombing this minute, 15 years for Gaza to try and clean up out of this. And that's also if they were allowed the ability to clean up the rubble. If they were given the machinery to clean up the rubble, because everything in Gaza has to be allowed in by Israel because they are in a prison, right? And that's the difference. When people go, they're not in a prison. Look, there's a cafe. Look, there's a bakery. It's not a prison. Well, if you can't leave and you can't really govern yourself because you're being bombed all the time and your access to resources like building materials, food, medicine, etc., is all carefully monitored and limited by Israel, then you're in a form of prison. And so if Israel doesn't allow them the machinery or the ability to clean up this rubble, of course, it won't get cleaned up at all. But even if they did, even if they said, here's the machinery, here's the ability, here's the money you might need, etc. Even if they did all that, it would take 15 years. And the assessment is it would cost $500 to $600 million. And that's not to rebuild, that's to clean out the rubble, which I've never lived amongst a lot of rubble, but from what I know, a society has a lot of trouble of existing when the buildings are all collapsed. And I mean, even if you're just walking past the rubble, it creates things like disease and like the injury and harm and the ability, the inability to get commerce to go through, for vehicles to get through, for food and medicine. All of that stuff can't function when there's rubble everywhere. Yes, and let's see. Beatrix mentioned in the comment thread mentioned the human remains. Yeah, of course. They're estimating 10,000 are dead under the rubble right now. So really, we're at 50,000 murdered by Israel, not counting disease and famine. The Lancet Medical Journal has said it's 186,000 if you count famine and disease, etc., and wounded who ultimately died. So 186,000 as opposed to the whatever 38,000 we're told. 70% of those are women and children. And anyway, this is this new analysis by the Guardian, by the UN, that thank you, Sean, for the donation. Keep fighting. You keep this show going. Sean wants to know if there's any chance of me getting Jesse Ventura on my show. I have interviewed and hung out with Jesse. Good guy, nice guy. And I can maybe repost my old Redacted Tonight interview with him, but I have not been in contact with Jesse. Jesse, at least in the past couple of years, Jesse is a very hard man to reach. Even when I was interviewing him like once a year back at Redacted Tonight, he has no phone number. He has no email. His show was called Off the Grid because he really was off the grid. Or for a time, it was called Off the Grid because he really was off the grid. So whenever people would float these ideas that Jesse was going to run for president or that he was going to be Trump's VP or something, I always thought, yeah, he's not. No, he's a happily retired man who occasionally will do an interview or occasionally will do a show, but I don't think he wants to be running around the country all the time. It's not really his thing. And now, of course, there was a time where that was his thing. But anyway. All right, one quick update on, I have gone after DSA, Democratic Socialists of America, before for endorsing AOC and others, despite the fact that AOC has proven that she'll vote for our $1 trillion military. She's proven that she'll vote. Sometimes she'll vote against sending more weapons to Israel, but most of the time she's voting in favor of these garbage bills and stuff like that. And so, with some very small examples, I don't think she's different than your average Democrat, at least not now. And so I had, when the DSA was continuing to tout her, I was like, for what? Like, what has she achieved? And when she votes for this U.S. empire destruction of the world, what are we supposed to go? Hey, yay! So I am not that celebratory of that. Anyway, it seems DSA has finally had enough. Now, I'm still suspicious that DSA often just funnels people into voting for Democrats, but that's an argument for another time. But the DSA has put out this national endorsement of Ocasio-Cortez, except that if you look at what it requires, what it requires for them to endorse her, there's about zero chance that it's going to happen. This was just last month. They voted to endorse Representative Ocasio-Cortez as long as she fulfills the following conditions: publicly opposes all funding to Israel, including the Iron Dome, which she voted to fund the Iron Dome, to continue the Iron Dome. So she hasn't done that. Participates regularly in DSA Federal Socialist in Office Committee. Publicly opposes all criminalization of anti-Zionism, which she did a long interview recently and had on a guest. She was the one that created the interview for someone else and basically promoted this idea that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. And she gave a big platform for it, as if anti-Zionism, as if critiquing Israel is anti-Semitism, is absolute disgusting dumpster fire propaganda. So She's not going to do this one either. Opposing all criminalization of anti-Zionism. Such as bills advancing the IHRA definition, which conflates criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism, and then finally publicly supports BDS to end Israeli settler colonialism. She is not going to do any of those, probably, but at least 3 of them she's absolutely not going to do. So I guess this is DSA saying they'll endorse her, but if she does things she'll never do. So I guess this means they are not endorsing her because she is definitely not doing at least 3 of those things ever, because she still has her eyes on the presidency, I believe. But anyway, good to see that the DSA is finally seeing the light a little bit. Good to see they're finally like, oh, turns out she's, basically supporting this genocide. Good to see they're starting to notice that. It only took them a few years, but it's good. It's good to grow up sometimes after a little while. Okay, moving on to the election that just happened. The president of the EU, the European Parliament, president of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, who has supported this genocide, supports all the wars, supports NATO creating wars. She supports all that. She has won re-election. Very exciting. So exciting. And here is some of what she stands for. By the way, here's a creepy caricature of her. The sad thing is it's not like that. Is not. She looks like the bad guys in Mars Attacks. She looks like the aliens in Mars Attacks. By the way, didn't occur to me till later in life. Mars Attacks is like a pro-war movie. Mars Attacks. If you ever actually look at what goes on in Mars Attacks, basically the U.S. government and the Americans in general want to create peace with these Martians, and the Martians just keep killing them. And the kind of overall moral is don't try and create peace. Instead, bomb and murder people. Like, it's kind of subtle, but it's in there. It's like a right-wing movie. Anyway, Ursula von der Leyen has just won her second term as president of the European Commission. She's included the goal of turning the European Union into a defense alliance in her political program. And I'm going to tell you in a minute how we know that when she says defense alliance, she means a war-creating pact. The program released by the EC states, quote, our work for the next 5 years will focus on creating a full-fledged European defense union. She emphasized that EU members will retain control over their armed forces, including defense doctrines and their deployment. She noted that Europe can do much to support and coordinate efforts to strengthen the military-industrial base, innovations, and the single market. She put out a white paper on, quote, the future of European defense. So, here's how you know that this is not about defense, that it's about war, that it's about blowing people up, that it's about murdering people, that it's about creating proxy wars, that it's about creating wars. Here's how you know it's not about defense. Because of how many times she says defense. If it were about defense, you would not have to keep pushing propaganda of it being defense. If it were actually about defense, you don't have to keep saying defense, defense, defense. This is defense, defense, defense. It's like, Hitler saying everything was defense, right? And it's very, very much the same as Noam Chomsky said before he's had his ailments. So over a year ago, he said, you know how you can easily tell that the proxy war in Ukraine, that Russia's invasion of Ukraine was provoked, is by how much Western leaders have said it's unprovoked. Every third word out of Britain's mouth, out of the U.S., out of Americans' mouth, out of the U.S. government's mouth, out of the U.S. media's mouth was unprovoked. Unprovoked, unprovoked, unprovoked. Putin's unprovoked. Invasion, unprovoked, unprovoked. Unprovoked, unprovoked. Now, you'll notice with all the other, many of the other wars that we've seen and invasions that we've seen, the propaganda didn't feel the need to keep saying unprovoked. But here they felt the need to keep saying unprovoked because it was fucking provoked. That's how you know Anytime they feel the need to repeat a propaganda talking point again and again and again and again and again until you're like, why am I hearing this word so much? You can be certain it is the opposite. If they're saying unprovoked, it's provoked. If they're saying defense, it means war-making pact. It means offense. It means aggression. It means belligerence. So the program released by the EC states our work for the next 5 years will focus on creating a full-fledged European defense union, including defense doctrines. Additionally, von der Leyen plans to appoint a European commissioner for, guess what? Defense. Within the first 100 days of taking office, she promises to present, along with her colleagues, a white paper on the future of defense. I want to have the Pee Wee Herman word of the day. Can we do that? Can every time von der Leyen says defense, I think everyone should go, and run around the room and alarms go off and confetti comes down and there's defense. Just Pee Wee Herman it up. Von der Leyen also called on MEPs to approve her for a second term as head of the EC to build a strong Europe ready for any challenges. In her program, she promised to create a European defense fund, which will invest in advanced defense technologies in the maritime, land, air, space, and cyber spheres. She, of course, committed to supporting Ukraine for as long as it takes. By the way, you know it's not as long as it takes because they keep saying as long as it takes. Also, that's great propaganda because what the fuck does as long as it takes mean? What is that? As long as what takes? As long as it takes for Ukraine to take over Russia? You mean that? Yeah, that's not happening. So as long as what takes? As long as it takes means nothing. It just means the U.S. and the vassal states across Europe are going to keep trying to drain Russia with an endless war and killing hundreds of thousands of innocent Russians and Ukrainians in the process. So Juan Carlos said in the comment section that I should interview Scott Ritter. I have interviewed Scott Ritter many times. So I'm sure I'll have him on again in not too long. Also, for those of you who missed it, I just did a special segment commenting on and discussing Scott Ritter's commentary on the assassination attempt. That's at youtube.com/moment of clarity. It's also at rumble.com/Lee Camp. All right, we're going to go on to a couple more topics here, but I just wanted, before I get into that, I wanted to say that for those of you who do not listen to my podcasts, I imagine a lot of you do listen to podcasts, and I hope you would at least check mine out. One of them is this show. So if you are not able to watch this show and you just want to listen to it sometimes, you can throw that on there. It's called The Lee Camp Show on Spotify. It's called Moment of Clarity on other podcast platforms because Spotify banned Moment of Clarity, so it was renamed. So, but here is something to be proud of. I don't often get any awards because the places that give out awards are generally don't want to touch me, the same way I'm censored and suppressed and the most censored comedian. They're not going to get near my stuff. The Grammys will give out a best comedy album to Louis C.K. after he's admitted to all kinds of sexual, we'll call them violations. I don't know what to call them. Sexual disturbances. After he's admitted to all that, they gave him a Grammy for best comedy album. So that didn't put them off, but they're not going to get anywhere near something like me because God forbid you show peace. But I did win this award. I'm listed on this. This is the Good Pods Top 10 Revolution Podcasts. And I am listed at number 5. Moment of Clarity is number 5. Top 10 Revolution Podcasts. So that's something. It's better than nothing. Okay? Jesus. It's better than nothing. Anyway, for those of you who have, listened to the podcast and hit the star button, hit the thumbs up, whatever you got there, thank you for doing that. Thank you for promoting it, sharing it with friends, letting people know. And it is now the number 5 of all time. Going back to the cavemen with their podcast, going back to the Vikings in the medieval times with their podcast. It is the number 5 revolution podcast of all time, of all the times. Okay. And I'm sure that goes for all languages and not just English. I'm kidding. It absolutely does not go for all languages. But anyway. So check out that podcast. Also check out my other podcasts. Government Secrets is one of them, and Common Censored is the other one. All of this stuff, or most of it, is listed at linktree.com/Lee Camp. So if you're ever thinking, oh, what was that? I wanted to see, how do I find he said something about a book or a video. It's all linktree.com/Lee Camp. You can find it. And I am going to bring a special segment today to my members on Locals about comments by Colonel Douglas Macgregor on Netanyahu and his need to create more war. A lot of interesting comments there. Thank you, Wing of Shoe, for the donation. Keep fighting. Thank you so much for supporting this show. But okay, let's get to a couple more things here. This is Lavrov's speech, the Russian diplomat. What he said, of course, his speech was in Russian, so Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russia. But here's some key points that he said at the UN Security Council meeting the other day. He said, Russia is ready to seek a balance of interests to resolve the current crisis in Ukraine. And this is the same as we've been. The U.S. doesn't want your average American to know this, but we've been hearing this over and over again since day one of this proxy war in Ukraine that we're dumping billions and billions of dollars to and allowing all these people to be killed, that Russia wants to sit down at a table and sort this out and have a situation where they don't feel their security is threatened and where Ukraine is not on their border with missiles pointed at them. And the U.S. and Britain have made sure to stop that every time. So he's just saying that yet again, that they want to sit down and resolve it. They don't want more killing. Moscow calls on all those interested in overcoming the Ukrainian crisis to consider the issue of minority rights. Berlin's decision to submit to the U.S. and deploy American long-range missiles on its territory is a humiliation for Germany, is what he said. Berlin has said that they will bend over to the United States and put long-range American missiles on German territory that could easily reach Russia, which, of course, puts us closer and closer to nuclear Armageddon. So it's horrifying. He also said NATO's military infrastructure is advancing into the Pacific region with the aim of undermining the ASEAN-centric architecture. He's talking, of course, about Taiwan and about all the ways the U.S. is arming the Pacific region in order to basically surround China with various forms of weaponry. And yet again, the U.S. is pushing closer and closer to nuclear war. And yet again, it is horrifying. He also said the resolution of the current European crisis should be accompanied by concrete steps to eliminate threats to Russia emanating from the West. All of these things sound pretty accurate and pretty reasonable, and yet the U.S. doesn't even want you to know these things are being said. Meanwhile, you've got video of Zelensky high-fiving all of the execs of the big banks. I'll try and narrate who he's shaking hands with. So for those of you listening to the podcast, big smiles here from Zelensky as he shakes hands with shakes hands with Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan Chase, Lakshmi Mittal of Acceler. I don't know what company that was. what is it? ArcelorMittal, Philip Hildebrand of BlackRock. There we go, BlackRock. Ray Dalio of Bridgewater, Steve Schwarzman of Blackstone. There's Blackstone again. And then they're all lined up, taking big happy photos with all the big banks. So there's Zelensky in the pocket of big banks, shadow banks, and they right now are overseeing the theft of Ukraine. Of course, Zelensky is not the one getting stolen from. He is enriching himself, so much so that I even brought you an article saying the CIA has basically spoken to Zelensky and been like, look, we know you're going to skim. We know you and your other people in Ukraine government are going to skim off the top of the billions being sent your way. But could you just decrease it a little bit? Because you just take it a little too much for our liking, like the 400 million, according to Seymour Hersh, that you've skimmed off the top. It's a bit too much. You can just get it down to like 390. Could you steal 390 million, maybe? But yes, that's what Zelensky's doing. Also, the United States and the West have floated the idea of stealing the Russian assets that were in, the banks in London, et cetera, which is hundreds of billions of dollars. And of course, this is speeding up de-dollarization. It's actually having the opposite impact that the U.S. wants of, maintaining global hegemony. But on top of that, Saudi Arabia, which now no longer feels the need to kowtow to the United States and has dropped the petrodollar deal. They still sell a lot of oil in dollars, so the petrodollar is not dead. It's just not really in writing anymore. Saudi Arabia has warned the G7 over the Russian seizures with a debt sale threat. Meaning Russia's seizures of assets that I just mentioned. The warning made by the EU state. Well, oh no, I can't read the Bloomberg won't let you read the goddamn article. The warning made to the EU states said people familiar with the matter move underscores Saudi Arabia's growing diplomatic clout. But so Saudi Arabia privately hinted earlier this year it might sell some of the European debt holdings if the group of seven, the G7, decided to seize the $300 billion of Russia's frozen assets. So this is a huge moment of Saudi Arabia standing up to the West and to the U.S. empire, because the U.S. is stealing Russian assets, and Saudi Arabia doesn't like that, not because they care about Russia, not because they want Russia to do well, but because if the West steals these assets, it basically makes it so that no one's assets around the world are safe. If they're in U.S. dollars, if they're in banks around the world, they could just be stolen. And Saudi Arabia is basically saying that they're going to dump the debt of the EU, which would greatly harm the EU economically. And anyway, this just highlights the shifting geopolitical rift, the shifting economic rift, and it highlights the power of Saudi Arabia to actually hold the U.S. and the West accountable, which has kind of never happened before, at least not on this level. It's pretty crazy. All right, let me bring you. I just want to bring us one more funny story before I do a special segment for those members over on Locals. You can become a member at leecamp.net, which if you scroll down to become a subscriber, and you will get the special segments, the extra segments, and it only costs 38 cents an episode. So well worth it. U.S. Navy pilots come home after months of shooting down Houthi rebels and drones. Now, this AP article, it's like, okay, so the U.S. Navy pilots came home. But if you actually read it, they start talking about how traumatizing it was for U.S. pilots to actually be shot at. U.S. Navy pilots came home to Virginia feeling relieved Friday after months of shooting down Houthi-launched missiles and drones off Yemen's coast in the most intense running sea battle the Navy has faced since World War II. Now, of course, what this article doesn't say is why are the Houthis doing this? Fucking genocide. There's a U.S.-backed genocide going on in Gaza. That's why they're doing it. If you stop the genocide, they stop firing at you. Interesting that is, huh? They said, clearing the motion from his voice, one of the soldiers said, or one of the naval men said, sorry, I'm not trying to avoid saying the word seaman, but one of the seamen said he couldn't be prouder of his team and everything the last 9 months has entailed. The USS Dwight Eisenhower Aircraft Carrier Strike Group, which includes 3 other warships, was protecting merchant vessels, protecting them because they're part of a genocide, and Yemen is attacking them. Iran-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen have been attacking ships linked to Israel. The U.S., or Britain, because it's a U.S.-backed genocide. Officials in the Pentagon have been talking about how to care for the sailors when they return home, including counseling and treatment for possible post-traumatic stress. I mean, I'm not laughing at the fact that they have stress. I'm laughing at the fact that the U.S. has, since World War II, has never had anyone stand up to them and has never had someone hold them accountable for their genocide to this level. And so this AP article is about how traumatic it is, how tough it is to perpetrate a genocide. I mean, that's what it is. It's like, look, we're doing this genocide. We're just like, could you not shoot at us while we're just trying to bomb some children? I mean, sure, we've killed 20-some thousand children, but it's just, come on, man. Come on. It's only been 9 months, and we've with the U.S.-backed genocide, and we've killed 20,000 children and 40,000 people, and that's not counting famine and disease. And just don't shoot things at us while we do it, please. We don't come after you when you do your genocides, okay? Okay. This article is just unbelievable. It's just the AP. It's really rough, man, to perpetrate genocide. Come on. Come on. Please. Just, these people are so disgusting. I'm talking about the media. These people, they have no self-awareness for hey, maybe we shouldn't write this article about how it's tough to do genocide, especially without saying that we're committing genocide. Maybe we should throw that in there. Okay. I'm off to do a special segment about Colonel Douglas Macgregor's comments on Netanyahu and his future plans and why he seems so eager to grow this war, this genocide, Israel's efforts, etc. I will be back tomorrow. Eleanor Goldfield should be here with me. That's 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. If you want to see this show continue and you want to get the special segment like the one I'm about to do, then please join up at leecamp.net. It will forward you to my locals page. Scroll down to become a subscriber, and it's a whopping $6 a month. It is 2 cups of coffee a month, and you get loads of perks. You get my ebook, Dangerous Ideas. You get my comedy special, Laughing All the Way to Shitstorm. You get these special segments often, usually often 2 times, sometimes 3 times a week. And you get to support the show. So it's like you get all those things along with just knowing that you're the reason this show can keep going. All that's at leecamp.net. I will see you tomorrow. If you're not joining me right now at Locals, I will see you tomorrow and keep fighting. Okay, everybody at Locals, how you doing? Let me just fix the streams here. You guys know the drill. You know the thing. Sorry, I wish this didn't take a minute, but it always does. It always does. How's everybody doing out there? Also, if you want to throw comments or questions into the chat, I'll see if I can get to some of those if I have time. Just one more minute here.